The first time I saw the message, I thought it was a mistake. Do you want to know who your husband really is? It was past midnight, and the screen of my phone cast an eerie glow against the darkness of our bedroom. My fingers hovered over the screen, my heart pounding. It was an unknown number, no name, no indication of who sent it. My first instinct was to ignore it. Probably a prank. Someone trying to stir up drama. I turned my head, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. Ethan lay beside me, his bare chest rising and falling in deep, even breaths. He looked so peaceful, his dark hair slightly tousled from our earlier activities. The sheets barely covered his lower body, exposing his sculpted torso, the faint marks of my nails still visible on his skin. A shiver ran down my spine, but it wasn't from the cold. I could still feel the heat of his touch, the way his body had moved against mine, the way his hands had claimed me like he couldn't get enough. Even now, the ache between my thighs was a reminder of the intensity we had shared just moments ago. I should let it go. I should put the phone down, slide back under the covers, and press myself against Ethan's warmth. But something about the message unsettled me. The words felt too precise, too intentional. Before I could stop myself, I typed back, "Who is this?" Seconds passed. Then a minute. No response. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head at my own paranoia. Just some idiot messing around. With a sigh, I placed my phone on the nightstand and turned back toward Ethan, pressing my body against his. As if sensing my movement, he shifted in his sleep. His arm slid around my waist, pulling me closer. His lips brushed against my forehead, his voice thick with sleep. "Can't sleep, baby?" I hesitated, just thinking. His grip on me tightened, his fingers lazily tracing circles on my hip. About what? I could feel the warmth of his breath against my skin, his presence both comforting and intoxicating. Should I tell him? No. It was nothing. Just a stupid message. If I told him, he'd laugh it off, call me paranoid. And I didn't want to ruin the mood. "Nothing important," I whispered, shifting slightly so my thigh brushed against his. His muscles tensed at the contact, and a low hum vibrated from his throat. You're lying," I gasped as he rolled me onto my back in one swift motion, his body pressing into mine. His dark eyes burned into me, filled with mischief, with desire. "If you can't sleep, let me give you something better to think about," he murmured, his lips trailing along my jaw. A breath hitched in my throat as his hands moved down my body, exploring familiar territory yet making it feel brand new. The slow, deliberate way he touched me made my skin burn, my breath quicken. "Ethan," I whispered, my fingers tangling in his hair as his mouth moved lower. He hummed against my skin, his lips teasing, tormenting. I couldn't answer. I could barely breathe. His hands gripped my thighs, spreading me open for him, his movements both gentle and demanding. My back arched off the bed as he pushed me further and further into that delicious haze, leaving no room for doubt, no space for my mind to wander back to that unsettling message. For that moment, nothing else existed. Just him. Just us. His name fell from my lips in broken whispers, his hands gripping my hips as he pulled me against him, our bodies moving in perfect sync. The room was filled with the sound of our pleasure, the bed creaking beneath us, the heat between us growing unbearable. "Mine," he growled against my skin, his voice rough, possessive. And in that moment, I let myself believe it. I let myself drown in the pleasure, in the sensation of him, in the illusion that we were perfect, that there was nothing hiding beneath the surface. But afterward, as Ethan fell asleep beside me, his arms still draped over my waist, my mind drifted back to that message. "Do you want to know who your husband really is?" The words felt heavier now, like a warning, like a promise. I stared at the ceiling, my body exhausted but my mind refusing to rest. My fingers twitched, an unease settling deep in my chest. Slowly, carefully, I reached for Ethan's phone. I held my breath as I picked up Ethan's phone from the nightstand. My hands trembled slightly, the weight of guilt pressing down on me. I never did this. I trusted him. But that message wouldn't leave my mind. I glanced at Ethan. His face was relaxed in sleep, his lips slightly parted. The same lips that had whispered my name with such hunger just moments ago. The same lips that apparently had been whispering to someone else. I swallowed hard and turned my attention back to the phone. The screen was dark. I tapped it, and his lock screen came to life. Our wedding photo. Wrong password. I frowned. Ethan never changed his password. It was always the same, my birthday. I tried again. Wrong. A sharp chill crawled up my spine. Why would he change it? My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared at the screen. It was nothing, I told myself. Maybe he updated it for security reasons. Maybe I was overreacting. But my instincts screamed at me. I exhaled slowly, placing the phone back where I found it. My heart was racing now, my thoughts spiraling. I needed to calm down. Maybe it was just a prank. Someone messing with me. Someone jealous of what Ethan and I had. But then, why did it feel like something was slipping through my fingers? I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Ethan kissed my temple before heading to the gym. His usual routine. I sat at the kitchen counter, stirring my coffee mindlessly, my appetite non-existent. The message still haunted me, circling my mind like a vulture. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly knocked my cup over grabbing it. Unknown number. Check his voice memos. A shudder ran through me. My head snapped toward the counter where Ethan's phone had been the night before. The voice memos? I had never thought to check there. I swallowed hard. This was insane. This was paranoia. But something deep inside me whispered, this is real. I waited. Hours crawled by until Ethan finally got in the shower. I heard the water running, steam seeping from under the bathroom door. Now, I grabbed his phone, my fingers shaking as I typed in a new combination. My own birthday didn't work. But something told me to try another. His sister's. The moment I entered it, the phone unlocked. I felt sick. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring at the screen, my stomach twisted into knots. I had hoped to be wrong. I had wanted to be wrong. With a deep breath, I navigated to his voice memos. There were dozens. Some labeled with dates, others with meaningless numbers. I scrolled through, unsure of what I was even looking for, until I saw one that made my blood turn to ice. You know we shouldn't be doing this. My breath hitched. It was recorded just 2 nights ago. With trembling fingers, I pressed play. The first voice was his. Deep. Familiar. We can't keep this secret forever. A soft, breathy laugh followed. A woman's voice. A voice I knew. I felt like I was going to throw up. Then let's stop pretending. You want me, don't you? My vision blurred. I clutched the counter to steady myself, my pulse hammering in my ears. No, this couldn't be real. The recording continued. The sound of heavy breathing, hushed whispers. What about her? Her. Me. Ethan's voice was lower now, rougher. She can never know. A rustling noise like fabric shifting. Then her voice again. Then show me. A choked sob escaped my throat. Because I knew that voice. I had known it my entire life. It was my sister. I couldn't breathe. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers, but I clutched it tightly. My grip so strong my knuckles turned white. My pulse was erratic. My body trembling violently as the realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. That voice. It was her. My sister. I slammed the phone down onto the counter, staggering backward like I had been physically struck. The kitchen spun around me. My stomach twisted painfully, and bile burned at the back of my throat. No, this had to be some kind of mistake. But the proof was right there, playing in my ears. My husband. My sister. Together. I pressed a hand over my mouth, trying to keep the sob from escaping. My chest ached. An unbearable pressure building inside me, threatening to crush me. The water in the bathroom was still running. Ethan was still in the shower, completely oblivious to the fact that his entire world was about to shatter. Or maybe, it was only my world that was breaking apart. I forced myself to move, to think. I needed answers. I needed to hear it again to be sure. My shaking fingers found the phone once more, and I scrolled back up, looking for more recordings. I didn't have to search for long. There were so many. Recordings dated back months, maybe even longer. How long had this been going on? With my stomach in knots, I pressed play on another. She's right upstairs, Ethan. It was her voice again, teasing. Breathless. That's what makes this so exciting. A rustling sound. A sharp inhale. You love this, don't you? The risk. A low groan from Ethan. You drive me fucking insane. A breathy laugh. Then a sound I would never be able to erase from my memory. My hands flew to my ears, slamming the phone onto the counter as if I could somehow destroy the truth along with it. I was going to be sick. I stumbled toward the sink, my stomach lurching. The acid burned my throat, but nothing came up. I had nothing left inside me. They had taken it all. I gripped the counter for support, my entire body trembling. I needed to get out of here. I needed to leave. But where would I go? The sound of the shower shutting off sent a fresh wave of panic through me. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I couldn't let Ethan see me like this. I had to pull myself together. I forced myself to straighten up, wiping my face with the back of my hand. I took deep, shaky breaths, trying to regulate my breathing, trying to pretend I hadn't just uncovered the most devastating betrayal of my life. Footsteps approached. The bathroom door opened. Ethan stepped out, a towel slung low around his hips, his dark hair still damp. His skin glistened from the water, and under any other circumstance, I would have admired the sight. But now all I saw was a stranger. He smiled when he saw me. "Morning, baby." I flinched. His smile faltered, his brows drawing together in confusion. "You okay?" I forced myself to nod. My throat was so tight I could barely breathe. "Yeah," I whispered. "Just a headache." His gaze softened. "Come here." I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap his hands away. I wanted to run. But instead, I let him pull me into his arms. His skin was warm, his scent familiar. For a fleeting second, I almost let myself sink into him. I almost let myself believe that this was still my Ethan, the man who loved me, the man who had vowed to be mine forever. But I wasn't that naive. Not anymore. As his lips brushed my temple, I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay still. I needed to play this carefully. I needed to think. Because this wasn't over. Not yet. The address led me to a sleek, modern apartment building downtown. Not hers. Not his. Somewhere neutral. A place meant for secrets. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. I had no idea what I was going to do when I got up there. My blood was boiling, but I forced myself to stay composed. I needed to see this with my own eyes. The elevator ride was the longest of my life. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. When I reached the door, I hesitated. But only for a second. Then I turned the handle. Unlocked. Of course it was. The apartment was dimly lit, bathed in soft golden hues. Wine glasses sat on the coffee table half empty. The faint scent of perfume lingered in the air, familiar. Sickeningly familiar. I followed the sound of voices down the hall, my pulse hammering in my ears. And then I saw them. Ethan's shirt was already off. He was standing close to her, his hands on her waist, his lips trailing down her neck. She was moaning softly, her fingers tangled in his hair, her body pressed flush against his. My sister. I couldn't breathe. A broken, guttural noise escaped me before I could stop it, and that was all it took. Ethan's head snapped up. My sister turned, her eyes going wide. "No," she whispered, but I was already stepping forward. "Go ahead," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Don't stop on my account." Ethan stumbled back like he had seen a ghost. His face drained of all color. "Ava," he breathed. Don't. I wasn't interested in excuses. I wasn't interested in anything either of them had to say. I had seen enough. But I wasn't finished yet. My hands were steady as I pulled my phone from my pocket. I swiped to the messages, the recordings, the proof of every filthy, despicable thing they had said. Then I hit play. The room filled with their voices. Their confessions. Ethan's face twisted in horror. My sister made a choked sound, her hands flying to her mouth. And I stood there, forcing them to listen to themselves. Forcing them to hear their own betrayal. She trusts me too much. She won't suspect anything until it's too late. She doesn't have to know. Not until we're ready. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Then Ethan moved. "Ava, please." I stepped back. "Don't you dare come near me." His jaw clenched. He ran a hand through his hair, looking desperate. "It's not what you think." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Oh, really? Then what is it, Ethan?" Because it sounds a hell of a lot, like you were planning to replace me with my own sister. My sister, no, not my sister anymore, finally spoke. Ava. I turned on her so fast she flinched. You don't get to say my name. Her eyes filled with tears. I never wanted to hurt you. That's funny, I said. Because you did. And don't act like it wasn't on purpose. Her lips parted, but she had no defense. Because there was none. Ethan tried again. We were going to tell you. I cocked my head. Oh? Before or after you fucked her in our bed? He had the audacity to look ashamed. I shook my head, laughing bitterly. You know what? It doesn't even matter anymore. You two deserve each other. I turned to leave. But then I paused. And for the first time, I allowed myself to truly feel it. The rage. The utter soul-crushing rage. I turned back, my voice ice cold. But if you think you're walking away from this unscathed, I smiled. And this time it wasn't bitter. It was vicious. Think again. The silence in the room was suffocating. Ethan stood frozen. His lips parted as if he wanted to speak. But no words came out. My sister, no, she was nothing to me now. Had tears streaming down her face. But I felt nothing. No pity. No sorrow. Only rage. I let the venom settle in my blood before I spoke again, slow and deliberate. You think this ends here? Ethan swallowed hard. Ava, please just listen to me. No, Ethan. You listen to me. I took a step forward, my phone still in my hand. His gaze flickered to it, realization dawning on his face. I have everything. My voice was calm, almost eerily so. Every message. Every recording. Every dirty little secret you two whispered in the dark. Thinking I would never find out. My sister sucked in a sharp breath. You wouldn't. I turned on her with a glare so sharp it could cut through glass. Wouldn't I? I saw the fear in her eyes then. She knew. She knew I was serious. Ethan tried again. His voice desperate. Ava, I swear it wasn't like that. I laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, please. Spare me the pathetic excuses. You weren't going to tell me. You were going to keep fucking her behind my back until you figured out how to get rid of me. The muscle in his jaw ticked. He didn't deny it. And that was all I needed. I stepped back. My grip tightening around my phone. You deserve to lose everything, Ethan. His eyes darkened. What are you going to do? I smiled. Watch. Started with a single text. One message. Sent to one person. And then like wildfire it spread. By the time Ethan figured it out, it was already too late. I sat in our living room, sipping a glass of wine as I watched it unfold. His phone rang. And rang. And rang. He ignored the first few calls. Then his hands started shaking. Then he finally picked up. What? His voice was sharp, panic creeping in. Whoever was on the other end spoke fast, loud. His face drained of color. I smiled into my wine glass. He hung up, turning to me, his expression twisted in fury. What the fuck did you do? I tilted my head. Oh, you mean the proof of your affair that just landed in your boss's inbox? Or the fact that your mother just called crying? Because she now knows her perfect son has been fucking his wife's sister. His fists clenched. Ava, this is my career. Not anymore. I reached for my phone again, my thumb hovering over the screen. Want to see what happens when I send this to the investors? He lunged for me. I was faster. I shot up from my seat, backing away. It don't it. Lay a single finger on me. And I'll send it to everyone. He stopped. His breaths were ragged, his hands still trembling. You fucking bitch, he hissed. I took another sip of my wine, completely unfazed. You should have thought of that before you fucked my sister. It took less than 24 hours for Ethan's life to completely unravel. His boss fired him. His mother disowned him. The apartment? Mine. His name was on the lease, but thanks to a few strategic calls his accounts were frozen, his credit trashed. He had nowhere to go. Except her. I didn't care. Let them rot together. And they did. It was pathetic, really. My sister had thought she was going to get some glamorous life with him. But what did she get instead? A broken man. No job. No future. Nothing. I heard through mutual friends that it didn't take long for her to crack. The weight of their betrayal. The shame. She left him. And Ethan? He begged. Oh, he begged. Voicemails. Flowers left at my door. Even a letter. Handwritten, pages and pages of apologies, regrets, promises. I never responded. Not once. As I had already won. And I never looked back.